All right. Hi, Mighty Family. Thank you, everyone who's joining us, everyone who's going to be joining us. We're going to have a great conversation about mental health, especially right now during the pandemic. And today, joining me, I'm so excited. It's the founder of To Write Love on Our Arms, Jamie Tworkowski. And I actually also saw on Twitter, because I follow you on Twitter, that it was the 5th anniversary of your best-selling book, If You Feel Too Much. So congratulations about that. That's really exciting.
Thank you. A funny thing happened though. I was really pumped about that.
Is it not correct?
No. I messed up. It was yesterday.
It was yesterday.
So
okay.
someone posted about it and I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's today. And then I realized it was yesterday. But I will still say thank you for your
happy birthday. The birthday weekend for your book
yeah.
is coming up. We're really excited to have you here. I just wanted to start by asking how you were. It's obviously a weird time. So just to kind of get that out of the way, how's it going, Jamie?
No, I like that question. I've been hosting a bunch of these and I try to start there as well. So I dig that. And I'm doing pretty well. I mean, it is certainly a strange time, as you mentioned, but I feel really grateful. All my friends and family are healthy and alive. I still have a job. I have electricity and food. I feel like things are pretty good. I'm actually back home in Florida with my parents at the moment. And I think as much as things are limited and so many things have been canceled, I've been trying to really focus on the good stuff that we still have. And even things like this, where we can use technology to still remain connected to friends, family, new friends. So I'm okay. How are you?
I'm okay too. It's funny as you were saying that, because I was thinking that resonated with me, this idea of obviously being scared, dealing with my own stuff, having to stay inside and having, my life change, but also at the same coin, feeling like almost like a scary gratitude towards what I do have, and realizing how precious it is that I, have an apartment that I feel safe in, that I have, my family's okay, that my job personally hasn't been affected. I think, it's been a mixture of scared but also feeling grateful, and it's and it sucks that not everyone maybe is feeling the same way.
Sure.
So I mean, again, like, we don't have to really, I think everyone's been doing that. It's a hard time, we don't have to name it. Everyone kind of knows kind of what we're going through. And because of this kind of shared collective thing that we're going through, there actually has already been a lot of content, I know, on our site, on other sites, about self-care, right? So it's not like you don't have to look very far to find a list of 5 ways to care yourself when you're home, 10 things to do when you're feeling anxious. And so just to start, just to kind of make self-care less of like a buzzword, I was curious to know your definition of self-care, just pandemic or not, and then maybe take it from there when we're talking about then like how we're taking care of ourselves now.
That's a good question, because I do. Here's another thing. I get confused. Is it a word or a phrase? How do we even?
Yeah.
I'm literally asking.
You're literally asking me, and I'm an editor who just got blank. Like,
I know it's hyphenated, so I don't know if it's 2 words.
I think at this point it's a word, right? So it's hyphenated because it's talking about one thing. But that's a great question.
Oh wait, hang on. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Wait, I just lost you. Okay, there you are.
Shoot. Okay, good.
No, my sister FaceTimed my mom and it showed up. I need to. The dogs are barking. People are going to space. There's a lot.
I really don't want to answer this question.
I'm like, cue.
This is the deflect of all.
Yeah, I'm like, cue everything. I need to think about a definition. I will say, I feel like my definition, or definitely my list, keeps getting longer. Like the way I think about self-care. So I don't
maybe work your way backwards, right? So maybe thinking about what self-care is for you, and then maybe that will help.
I like that.
Put it in a catchphrase. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
I feel like I like it being broad, and I think at this point it's anything that helps me feel healthy, which is also broad. So whether that's I end up just going to my list. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
But things that help me feel rested inspired, alive, physically healthy. So I feel like it's a bit of a catch-all. I usually use this example of, it's like if you and I approached a buffet, we probably wouldn't come back with identical things on our plate, but the important thing is that we get a meal out of the buffet.
I think that's a great definition. I think that's a great definition of self-care. What
Yeah.
you need from the buffet
Yeah.
to get through the day.
Because I think it's easy. I think I used to just think it was super locked in on mental health, but now I feel like getting enough sleep is self-care, having a relationship with my nephews, walking my dog, going surfing, watching shows that I love. Like, it's just all sorts of things that make me smile, help me feel alive, remind me who I am, help me feel healthy in all the different ways. So yeah, but I agree. It's interesting because it is so popular that it's almost easy to be like, oh gosh, self-care again. But I do at the same time think it's really important.
Yeah, well, what are people in our community talk about a lot is that this idea of, and I don't think people necessarily have this misconception anymore, but this kind of idea that self-care has to be kind of like pampering, or it has to be,
bougie.
it's almost like an extra thing you do. Like, it's something that you do when you have money and time, versus it being like, and again, like what you said before, the stuff that makes you feel alive, the stuff that makes you feel calm, makes you feel healthy, rested. And I think it's a hard question to answer, because all these ideas of health, calmness, mental peace, that's so subjective. That's all like stuff that people have to decide for themselves.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it's hard to define. And it also makes sense that it's coming up a lot right now, because I think people are very desperate for these kind of grounding things that kind of keep them feeling like themselves. You mentioned some things, but I was curious to know for you, what kind of things that you typically do to take care of yourself, because we're part of a special breed of people. I mean, everyone struggles all the time, right? You know, there's no monopoly on people struggling, but if you kind of are someone who struggles all the time anyway, with like getting through life, obviously something like this can make it that much harder. What are some things that you've been able to maintain despite the pandemic changing everything? And then I'm curious to know if there's any kind of new things you've had to do to adjust.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think I named a couple, but I kind of have like two lives at the moment. So I technically live in Nashville, but I've been back in Florida. I was in Florida at the beginning of the pandemic arriving, and so I spent about a month here, and then I've been here for about a week this time. And moving to Nashville has made me love surfing, and surfing is hard to do in Nashville. So that's been a big part of me coming back, is like reconnecting with this thing that I loved as a kid. Yesterday I surfed twice and it made me so happy. But outside of that, I think I have a little dog who's about a year old, and spending time with her, taking her for walks in the evening. I think whether it's probably not as often in person, but FaceTime with my sisters, my nephews, my parents when I'm away, with friends, phone calls, right? Old-fashioned phone calls. I think we live in like this amazing moment of television. So making the best of that and finding shows that I love. I drove down here from Nashville, and so it's music and podcasts. So I don't know. I think as an introvert and, you know, a writer and someone who's sensitive, it's like all the books and shows and films.
What shows are you watching? I think the people want to.
You know what? I feel like I just finished season 3 of Ozark.
Nice.
And I'm blanking on his name, but there's a new character in season 3, and mental health is a big part of his storyline. Have you seen it?
So I haven't seen the last season. It's funny. I only know because people have written about it in our community.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a character who, not to spoil anything, but I think has bipolar.
Yeah,
I know that's a huge part of the narrative. Yeah.
So I liked the first 2 seasons, and then I loved the 3rd season, and it was really because of his character. And it was funny. I posted about it when I finished, and I tagged him, and he responded.
Nice.
And I was like so excited.
Yeah.
But I loved I could go on and on, but like the innocence and the purity and the sensitivity of this character for whom life was hard was really beautiful and powerful to me. So that was Ozark. And I feel like when you love a show and you finish, then it's like, oh man, what's going to fill that void? Are you watching a great show?
I've been doing a lot of comfort rewatching. I just finished rewatching the last, or at least like a few middle seasons of The Office, which is always just like a, God, I need something to, mind with. And I've also been rewatching Schitt's Creek. So it's funny. I've actually been, I do want to find, so Schitt's Creek, The Office, and I've actually been watching with my partner episodes of Survivor, which has been like a very fun thing just to kind of like randomly get into because it's just such like an intense, like old show that's like we were watching like season 3, so it's like every it's not current at all, but anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing. Comfort shows and Survivor is pretty much it.
But I think my biggest takeaway and even in doing interviews and hosting conversations lately, I feel like that's the one thing I just want to remind people, because I think it's so tempting to just fall into this narrative that I'm alone, I'm isolated, I'm so lonely, it's so hard. And there's totally truth in that. And I think it's felt important to remind people, not only can we FaceTime friends and family, not only can we make phone calls, we can do Zoom calls, but we can also get help that way. Someone could sit across from a counselor, someone can step into an online support group or step into treatment. And so that might be a no-brainer for this community, but I feel like that's probably my favorite thing to share in this season.
Yeah, it's a good reminder. I mean, I've been doing my therapy sessions in my bed with my laptop, and I was nervous about how I was going to adjust to it because I think I did therapy over the phone like once, and I didn't like it over the phone. And so I was nervous about the video chat experience, and now I feel like I'm just like already used to it. And I turn on my video chat, and I blah blah blah, and I cry, and I do everything I need to do, and I still get a lot out of it. So I think it is a good reminder to folks.
Yeah,
like it's and I know, and I know obviously not everyone, it's not accessible to everyone. But,
sure.
Reminder to go to therapy. Well, it's funny you mentioned that idea of feeling unsupported, though, is because another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I know you're someone who, you're on Twitter, I'm on Twitter, we're all on various social media accounts, and we've already had this weird world where we live so much virtually, right? And now it's like even more of a thing, like most of us are only living virtually, and this idea of getting into a comparison trap with how other people are living their lives during the pandemic. So we've seen a lot of just like seeing someone you went to high school with doing like a push-up challenge, or like seeing like some person you follow who just finished their like 6th creative art project, and you're sitting there knowing you're a creative person, you haven't been able to access anything. So what would you tell folks who are, spending more time on social media maybe, and that comparison trap is like really getting to them because now more than ever, like, our lives are what we can see on our computer and stuff.
It's funny, it brings to mind, like you joked about the articles that are out there, and I feel like some of these articles are out there because I feel like it is a moment where, am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah.
Where people are calling bullshit on like hustle culture and this idea that we all, that we're all just meant to work around the clock and be so productive. And I feel like the last couple of months there's been a lot of intelligent conversation, or even just honest conversation, sort of pushing back at that. And I've been on that program I feel like I've been not a fan of hustle culture for a while. I'm trying to remember your original question. I got so excited.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, but that was the, what I was referring to.
Oh, what would I say? What would I say to someone?
Yeah, I guess that was my question. What would you say to someone who
feels like they're not doing enough. Yeah. I think it honestly makes a case for being known and knowing other people, because if we only look at social media and we look at these curated Instagram highlights, and people that seem to have it all together, I think it does feed some of those feelings. But if we stay connected to friends and family and ask each other how we're doing and realize that other people aren't having a great time, like not everyone is crushing it and being super productive. I mean, my sister works full time for the organization, and she's been trying to figure out how to do homeschool with 2 little boys, and I just feel like so many people are just trying to make it work and doing their best. And I think in general, pandemic or not, I love social media. I use it every day, probably more than I should, but it can't be everything. It can't be where we spend all of our time, And so I think it really makes a case for logging out or putting our phone down for X amount of time each day, because there's just something really healthy about taking a walk and having a phone call, or, you know what I mean? Just all these things that happen outside of social media.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I've been trying to balance for myself. This idea of like, it's this duality of like, okay, like I don't want to be hard on myself when I am not doing things that are creative that I enjoy. But I also know genuinely, if I'm in my bed watching Netflix all day, I'm like not happy. So I don't know if you have the same thing where it's like, how do you strike that balance between like going easy on yourself, but then also being like, but I also like know that there's certain things if I do genuinely make me feel better.
Yeah.
And so I also don't want to kind of dismiss any actions that I can take to kind of lift myself up a little bit.
Yeah. I think for me, I've realized that purpose is really helpful and purpose is really important. I also want to acknowledge the privilege that I get to do a job I really love. And a lot of people are either out of work or they don't feel passionate or inspired by their work. So I know not everyone has the opportunity, but for me, I think to plug into my job throughout the day or throughout the week, or not even my job, but like purpose, to do things that feel meaningful, even to show up for conversations like this one. It doesn't have to be 8 or 10 hours a day. You know what I mean? Like even on a day like today, I have a couple of these and I really want to show up for these. Mm-hmm. And I think the nature of balance is like, I can have some free time or downtime with all of those other hours, but to me, I think having a couple things to look forward to that I feel like I have to be awake and alive for, feels really healthy.
Yes, having something to be awake and alive for. I like that. You don't have to create it for yourself. There are actually a few. I just figured out how to look at the comments.
Oh yeah,
there are a few great comments. I want to make sure we give
it. There are.
Shout out to. Yeah, I had the same moment where I was like, I just realized that they were there. Sorry, everyone. But Christine said something I wanted to read out loud. She basically. It's a great answer. For me, self-care is a mindset. Never thought about it being a word, etc. I love that comment, how self-care being a mindset, like this mindset of self-preservation.
It's also easier than figuring out if it's one word or two.
Yes, that's true. That is true. It gets me out of an excuse of having to figure it out.
If you guys haven't, oh wait, I'm not the host, but if I was the host, I would say, if you guys have any questions, we would gladly entertain some of your questions.
Say that, that's fine.
Did I just speak out of turn?
Thank you for saying that. I second that. Liz, who I know Liz from my journaling workshop, said that is so cool, the buffet. I love it. The buffet, people like that buffet metaphor. Because
I think not that we have to talk about self-care the whole time, but I think if I tell you my list, it may not work for somebody else, or it may not be interesting. Someone else might want to run 5 miles and I might be like, I do not want to run 5 miles, but I think all of us being in touch with things that feel good to us in different ways, I think is what's important.
I really don't want to run 5 miles.
Yeah.
We got a Schitt's Creek shout out, which made me happy.
And is that a cuss word?
Schitt's Creek.
It is. It's not because of the spelling.
Tricky one. It's a tricky one. Cool. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on these comments. Another thing that I've been noticing in my community, in our community, the Mayas community, are people, and we've had two particular pieces that have resonated with a lot of people. This idea that people with a history of trauma specifically, or who experience anxiety, actually feel like strangely calm during pandemic times, and actually find that like they've kind of been really easily able to adjust for whatever reason, because maybe they just like, I don't know, maybe this is like some people, thrive under chaos for certain reasons, or some of the pressure's been taken off of them. And now they're kind of nervous for the transition back into normal, right? So this idea of like, I actually like, my anxiety brain actually adjusted really well to this, and now I'm more afraid of things kind of going back to quote unquote normal, which is another thing we could talk about, right? Because what does normal even, going back to normal even mean? But I don't know if you had any, oh yeah, this is great. So Laura said, this is my time to shine, right? Like I've seen that comment a lot, this idea that like, like I've been preparing for worst case scenarios my whole life, right? I don't know if you had any thoughts or insights.
No, I think it's fascinating. I feel like there's been a couple of memes floating around where it was like, oh wow, the world's anxiety finally caught up to mine. I think, and this is not researched or expert opinion, but I think as someone who struggles with depression or just mental health in general, I think that so often we feel alone and we feel like I'm the only one who's struggling. Everyone else is doing great and I'm really hurting, and I have to keep it quiet. I'll be judged, I'll be misunderstood. And all of a sudden, to some extent, we're aware that pretty much everyone is struggling. Not that everyone's circumstances look identical, but we are all thinking and talking and dealing with the same thing worldwide. And so I think there's something really healthy. There's kind of just this layer that's been added to everyone where it's like, oh, life is hard. Life is uncertain. It's scary. We don't know how this is going to play out. And so I almost feel like that can be reassuring if I realize I'm not the only one who feels this way, but everyone I know is walking through this.
Yeah. Something that just reminded me of not an issue, but a fascinating thing I've kind of come to realize with my partner. My partner has OCD, and which I know is a lot. There's also been a lot of conversation about how this affects people with OCD, and it's been interesting because I find how I comfort him has had to change, I think actually for the better, where before it's really easy to take someone with anxiety and be like, you're being unrealistic, you're over exaggerating. And not that I would say those words to him, right? But you think you're being comforting by explaining that the risk isn't as high as they think it is. And that can be a strategy, right? That's like a CBT thing. In some ways it is a strategy to challenge your own reality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now it's like, it's harder for me to do that because he's not we're not overreacting. So in any ways, it's had to, as someone who's supporting someone else, I've had to just sit there and go, no, this sucks.
Yeah.
This is just bad. I can't try to reason with you. I can't try to, kind of just, I can't try to use logic right now, because even the logic doesn't look very good if you're like concerned about your health. That's just been an interesting thing that I've noticed as far as just comforting other people. And I think you said something like this idea of just like having more united empathy, that like we're all going through, something right now. It's not necessarily like there's some people, some people,
and we're all grieving something. Obviously, that can look very different. Some people have literally lost family members and loved ones, but all of us are grieving at least something, even if it's just our way of life, the things that we got used to enjoying, so many of which are off limits right now.
There are so many great comments. So I think I'm gonna visit here and let it kind of guide it. Larissa asked, I'm curious what you think about this. I struggle with knowing the difference between allowing myself to self-care and giving in to my depression / being lazy. Is there a line to not cross? Is there such a thing as too much self-care? Do you have any thoughts about that, Jamie?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think it makes sense that some of those lines would be blurry, but I think the first thing that comes to mind is, depression tends to feel negative. It feels sad. It feels unhappy. It's not life-giving. Whereas I think when self-care is working, it feels closer to the opposite. It feels healthy. It feels positive. It feels inspiring. And so I think that maybe comes to mind just as like a guide, because I think it's different for all of us. And some of it's circumstantial where like, hey, maybe you need a Saturday where you watch 7 hours of television, and that I'm not going to say that's wrong. You know what I mean? I think it just comes down to overall, do you feel healthy? The things you're choosing, the way you're spending and filling your time, does it feel healthy and life-giving? Do these things help you recharge, or are they, simply ways of coping or kind of medicating? And then I think it's also good to talk about it with other people. Certainly, I mean, a counselor would be at the top of that list, but to kind of, if you're talking about processing life with someone, I mean, to me, that there's a lot in this question, and it could be a cool thing to process with a counselor.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
Oh,
I resonate with that a lot. This idea of I even though it can look the same, right? So like I love the example. Okay, so let's say watching TV for 7 hours, a day. I do think that, at least for me, I know the difference between I'm watching TV all day because I hate myself.
Yeah.
And I don't think I can do any better, and I think I deserve just to, be a blob who doesn't do anything. And I'm watching TV because I'm tired and I want a break, and I'm enjoying the show that I'm watching.
Sure. Yeah.
It's so funny how it can look like staying in bed all day, but can mean such different things.
Yeah.
That is something that's very personal. You have to kind of feel it for yourself.
And I think balance comes to mind where, yeah, I mean, if it's day after day, then that's something to be concerned about. But if it's like, man, I am looking forward to tomorrow, I don't have anything on my schedule, I'm going to stay in bed and watch my favorite show. Yeah. That's different than like, whoa, it's 4 days straight, I haven't talked to anyone, I haven't taken a shower,
Yeah, showering can be tough.
Yeah.
Morgan had a nice comment. She just said simply, "To write love on her arm saved my life. Thank you." And I just thought that was a nice
yeah.
out, but I also realized, I think we just dove right into it because, again, we're all kind of part of this big happy mental health community. A lot of people are familiar. Just in case, just for due diligence,
sure.
If you could tell us a little bit about To Write Love on Her Arms, and kind of what you do.
So to write,
you're doing whatever you're doing, kind of during this.
Yeah.
Time.
To Write Love on Our Arms is a nonprofit. We exist to bring a message of hope and help to people dealing with depression, addiction, self-injury, suicide. You could add anxiety, eating disorders. And we got our start in a surprising way back in 2006, just trying to help a friend. And I wrote a story called To Write Love on Our Arms that sort of took on a life of its own. Started selling t-shirts as a way to help pay for my new friend Renee's treatment. And we just learned really quickly. This first happened in the context of MySpace back in 2006. You can giggle if you need to, but this is the truth. Through MySpace, we started to hear from so many people in so many places that could relate to Renee's story. They could relate to struggle. They could relate to life being painful. Heard from people who had lost loved ones, whether it was suicide or addiction. Heard from people that wanted to learn more, or they had someone in their life that they were concerned about. And so for 14 years now, we've been inviting people into this conversation, working to educate people, to encourage people, to connect people to resources, and also to give financially. So trying to give money that turns into scholarship dollars so that people can sit across from a counselor or step into treatment. And ultimately just want to invite people to be honest and want to remove stigma, and kind of working toward and dreaming about a world where everyone feels free to talk openly and honestly about mental health.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of people are familiar with the great work that the organization does. You're also very well known for just like very great T-shirts, right? I think oh, are you okay? Oh, yeah, let's see. No one else can play your part.
Wait, oh, that was a good move by the producer.
You got
What? They just kicked you out. That wasn't nice.
It's nice to see you.
Wait, hey, they were like, no one else can play your part, but we don't need her. No, this one's funny because a lot of times you can only read the first line, and so it's like, oh, no one else. What?
What is that?
And then this one is not as nice. No one else can play.
Right, so you think you're anti-play.
Yeah, and then so it's really like versatile.
I love it. I should have worn it. I have my people shirt.
Yeah, is it the one with the bicycle?
No, it's just black shirt, white text. People.
Okay. Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of on the street. I've actually happened a few times where I just got a lot of like, yeah, just like,
yeah.
People do need people, and I'm like, that's right.
Well, you tell them to stay 6 feet away.
Of course. There's obviously pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Now I'm like masked, no, not looking at anyone, trying to stay away.
I'm blanking on her name, but thank you so much.
It was Morgan.
Morgan.
Morgan, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's amazing. I mean, I feel like 14 years in, that comment still means a ton. And I think whether it's something like that or meeting someone that has our logo tattooed on their body, like these things have a way of reminding us just how much bigger it is than me and then our team. And so that's really special. And ultimately, I'm just really glad that you're still alive, Morgan, that you're still here with us and also specifically here with Sarah and I today.
Thanks, Morgan. We're jumping around a little bit, but it's okay because I love fielding these questions. Less of a question, more of a comment. Kimberly just made a comment how it's particularly a hard time to be on social media with a lot of the acts of racism we've seen, with some police brutality, and just kind of to talk about it more generally, this idea of, and you kind of already touched on this, but the idea of balancing being informed. I actually think this relates to COVID-19 too. So this is obviously a very specific question to what's going on right now, what has been happening these past few days, but this idea of balancing staying informed and taking care of yourself. And I think that relates to COVID-19. I think it relates to police brutality. I think it relates to acts of racism. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know that you've been vocal about this as well.
Yeah, I do think it comes back to balance. I mean, I guess one example is the video of the murder that went viral yesterday. I haven't seen it. I've chosen not to watch it, but I don't feel uninformed. I still feel like I can read and participate in the conversation, but I can do it in a way that feels healthy or appropriate for me. I think 6 weeks ago, I was watching a ton of news, whether it was to be informed or to be grumpy about the president or some combination. And lately I'm watching a lot less news. Like I'm just not taking it in as much. So I think ultimately it comes down to balance. I think we don't have to do what it feels like everyone else is doing. We don't have to read every single article or be up to speed on every, viral headline. I think we have to ultimately figure out, and this community, I think, gets it. Like, how do we balance our own mental health, our own well-being with staying informed and wanting to be educated? Because as Kim touched on, it's not just the pandemic, right? It's the election, it's politics, it's racism, police brutality, climate change. Like it's a long list of really hard things. And I think so that we can show up day after day for years to come, we have to figure out how to do that in a way that is sustainable.
Yeah, and also going back to this idea of like I do think that when you're looking at a more, a more like medical model of mental distress and mental illnesses, that anxiety is irrational, or depression is irrational, and it's harder. I think it's harder and harder to kind of talk about it in those ways when there's actually so much stuff that's like really depressing, or a lot of stuff that like makes you anxious. And so that's been kind of a hard thing to navigate too, this idea of like those lines start to get blurred, and maybe they should, right? Because there is a lot of struggling in the world, and there are a lot of people who their anxiety or the depression, even though it might be treated like a medical condition, and in some cases it should be, there might be truly just things going on in their lives that are, that need to be addressed as well. So it's an interesting time to be in the mental health space because of all these very legitimate things kind of being thrown in our faces as we kind of navigate advocacy.
I think one of the positive side, or like a silver lining, I just feel like I know intersections or intersectionality is a more popular idea than it was years ago. Or I just feel like I think about intersections now where I didn't used to. Like when this started, I just thought about mental health. I thought about depression. Like we have this mission statement and we have a few issues that we name. And now I think about, as I've gotten older and hopefully learned a bit more, like, whoa, all of these other issues intersect. You know what I mean? Like, I think 15 years ago, I would have said, oh, I don't really do politics. I don't really care. And now it's like, I'm 40 years old, and I think, man, to care about people is to care about things that affect people. It doesn't mean I love politics or think it's awesome, but I want to care about the things that cause pain and suffering to other people. And certainly that relates to mental health. Certainly racism and police brutality is going to relate to mental health. So I think I think we still have to figure out what's healthy and what's balanced, but I also think it feels important to kind of just pay attention and learn and realize how these things overlap and share common ground, and that just because something doesn't affect me directly doesn't mean it's not important.
Yes. I think, again, like it's kind of that we're seeing that a lot right now, right? Where it's getting harder to ignore how all these issues are so intersectional. To shift gears a little again, there's another great question from the comments, because these people are great and they're chatting with us. Larissa, I thought it was an interesting question, so I'll make it a little broader. She asked, she started by saying to write Love On, her arms has helped her so much. She's trying to start her own nonprofit for survivors of sexual assault and abuse, and she's asking for resources. I wonder if you have less specific resources. Obviously, if you do, feel free to share it. I wonder if in the comments we can go back later and share, but I'm wondering for any advice for someone who's interested in starting, whether it's a nonprofit or a support group or something right now.
Yeah.
You've done it.
No, I think, well, first I try to acknowledge that we had such a surprising beginning. I say we, part of that feels humble and healthy, but at the time it was really scary because it was just me, So I try to remind people that, I didn't have a moment where it was like a whiteboard and, oh, I think I might start a nonprofit. Like we had such a surprising beginning because I just tried to help my friend and I wrote a story, and we've sort of been trying to keep up ever since. Like it was really, the nonprofit was born out of the response to the story and to the t-shirts. And so I try to acknowledge the uniqueness, but my short answer, because I feel like I get some form of this, is, I think trying to find people who are already doing, it's not trying to talk someone out of starting their own thing, but if you want to start your own thing, to me, it makes sense to learn as much as you can from people who are already doing similar work, whether it's work in that field or it's a charity that resonates with you. That could be an internship, that could be finding a mentor, it could be volunteering somewhere. Obviously there could be an educational component. And then I think as you get started, I feel like I just love to encourage people to admit and acknowledge what you don't know, because of course there are things that you don't know. And I think it makes a case for me. I had sort of a big brother, like even technically for the first year, we were under the umbrella of another nonprofit. And that sort of gave us someone, like as an entity and also as a person, to learn from. And so someone who I could ask, how do I do this? What's a budget? What's a board of directors? What does it mean to start and lead a nonprofit, and how to do that, carefully and ethically and sustainably. And so I think, I don't know if it's overly simple, but I just love to encourage people to, I think it's sexy to want to start something, like I'm going to be a founder and there's going to be a logo and a website, and all of that's fine. It's totally okay. But I think the caveat I would just encourage is, hey, find the people that have already been doing this work or some work that intersects and overlaps, and learn as much as you can. And as you get started, continue to learn from people who are doing it.
Yeah, I think that's smart advice. I think that it's like you don't need to. You can add, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you create something, right? Like I think that we're always stronger when you're networking, when you're leaning on other people and getting support. Go ahead.
Oh no, just I see in the comments someone mentioned RAIN as an organization to check out, and I thought that was something that came to mind for me as well.
Yes, RAIN's really important. There's another great question from Stephanie. She wrote, right now she's working from home. I work as an advocate for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. So maybe you need to hook up these two. Before it was easier separating work from home, but now there isn't a separation. How do I balance my own self-care and still maintaining my work now that I'm dealing with the heaviness of my work in my home, where there was once a place to find peace? This idea of working from home, but then also having a job that's very emotionally heavy, and having that be in your home space. That's a great question, Stephanie.
Yeah, I think want me to say some stuff?
Yeah, please.
A couple of things that come to mind. I think first off, to be able to acknowledge the weight of it is huge. Like just to do what you're doing now, to acknowledge that it's hard, and to realize that millions of people with all sorts of jobs feel something close to what you're feeling in terms of working from home, whether there are kids in the home, whether they're regardless of all the other variables you can add, just the difference where I used to go to an office and now I am safe at home, trying to figure out how to do all these things. I don't feel super versed, but I feel like it's another one where there's a bunch of good articles floating around, right? Like I feel like there are tips on how to make the best of working from home and still living at your home, and figuring out self-care in the midst of that. One thing that's felt healthy for me is to get outside, obviously to do that in a way that's safe and that's healthy. But even like when I was in Nashville, I just ended up so looking forward to taking my dog for a walk before dark. And it's just something about like the change in scenery and getting outside of my home after spending most of the time inside just became something that I would really look forward to. Even now, like if it's taking a drive or maybe getting to go surfing. But I think remembering that we can go outside. We just need to do it in a way that's safe. Those are a couple thoughts. I don't know if you have some thoughts, Sarah.
Those are all great things. I mean, it's funny because I'm living it, right? Like I don't have an office at home. I have a pretty small apartment. I think I think a lot of people also are not able to create the space that they want to. What's helped me, if you're able to do this, is to just have those strict boundaries, right? Like I've really had to force myself to have my little planner, because I'm a little planner and all my notes and all my weird lists. And I really have a beginning and end date to what I call my, for me, it's my mighty time, right? Mighty time, my work time. And I do my best to hold myself accountable. And I'm really lucky that I live with a roommate who can kind of hold me accountable, because, it's like 6 o'clock and she's making dinner and I'm in the living room because I don't have an office, and life will kind of start, and I'm kind of reminded that it's time to get off the clock. So having to carve out the time has been helpful to me. And just sticking to it. And I have, I do try to keep my workspace, but it's funny. Some of those lists, it is funny how some of those lists are, I've gotten a lot of good things, but some of the things you hear, like, make sure you're still getting dressed. Like, I have to do it.
Yeah.
like I put on, like, this isn't even a nice shirt, but like, this is for this, like, I brushed my hair this morning for you. So
it's great.
And even then I'm like, oof, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So whatever boundaries, if boundaries looks like getting dressed and that's your way of saying I'm arriving for the work day, if boundaries just like a time thing, that's the only way I've been functioning. And even then it's like kind of trying my best.
Sunny left a comment that I thought was smart. She said, is there a space within your home that can be a safe space where you don't do any work? And again, all of our homes are different, like different sizes. Some people have more space than others, but even if, I think there's something to be said for like keeping it as everything everywhere, right? Like work and home and kitchen and bed and everything mixed together, like to whatever extent we can separate. I think that does seem healthy, even if it's as simple as like my bedroom is off limits to work, or my couch, or whatever that looks like for each of us.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's so important. It's kind of like, it's like telling your brain like it's wind down time. It's like we still need these signals, especially when we're doing something so heavy. You still need to tell your brain the signals of, okay, maybe I'm not in my car on a commute, but I'm still shutting my laptop, closing my notebook, maybe going to a different room for a little while. We can maybe like trick ourselves a little bit. So I'm a really big fan of tricking your brain. I really like trying to trick my brain.
This is super random and a little bit of a confession, but I go to Starbucks every morning, whether I'm in Nashville or Florida. And so when I'm in Nashville, I go through the drive-through, but it's like, I feel like my days are bookended by these two outings. So I have my Starbucks drive-through in the morning, and then like the walk with the dog in the evening.
Yes.
But I joke, it's almost like, it's like my morning commute, but I'm just going to get coffee, like I just go to the drive-through.
Hey, if it forces you to like, I don't know, like get out the door and do an action. Because what I fall into too easily is I'm definitely guilty of rolling out of bed and just started working, right? And there's no separation. And when I have like bad weeks, that's what I can see myself doing, that I'm going to bed, or right before bed, I'm like still thinking about work. So just like anything to remind yourself, like you are not just like a worker, you are a person, and you are a person who needs your Starbucks drive-through every morning. And so that's like your way of almost declaring like, like I need something before I start producing. Because otherwise, like, how are you going to give back if you're not caffeinated?
I found it makes me happy. Like it. It's like my little tradition.
I think that.
And then I think like full circle, I think just, man, give yourself a lot of grace. Like it's hard. It's hard for so many people. If you feel like you're not, if it just feels like you're not doing a great job of balancing it, like don't beat yourself up, because I think so many people can relate to that.
Yeah, that's such good general advice. I think just like try to do the thing, then don't be hard on yourself if you can't do the thing, right? Like we can always be in that state of trying and then forgiving ourselves and trying and forgiving ourselves.
Some days or some weeks are going to be better than others, for sure.
Yeah, we have a few good questions. I don't want to keep you for too long.
I'm happy to be here.
We're on a roll. Liz asked, I'm working on my own site and look up to both of you for guidance and knowledge. Right now, I observe and ask a lot of questions. I'm trying not to judge myself, and I'm happy. Do you ever have moments where you doubt yourself? I bet you never doubt yourself, Jamie. I bet you just never. I bet you just.
Oh my gosh! No, imposter system. Imposter syndrome is real. Oh, I doubt myself throughout the day, every day. I mean, first off, thank you for the kind words, Liz, and thank you. I mean, it means a lot when people pay attention, and thanks for looking up to both of us. But I can totally relate to bad days, and I mean, even something as simple as like when I'm about to go live and I've never used this platform and I wonder if I'm going to be smart enough to use the platform, like, is all the technology going to work? Am I going to know how to do it? Am I going to have good answers? Am I going to say the right things? I feel like if we're honest, pretty much everyone can relate. I always share this example and I love it. This is an Oprah. I'm not like Oprah's fine. I'm not like a student of Oprah, but this does come from Oprah. Oprah has obviously interviewed so many celebrities and successful people. And she shared something. She said at the end of most interviews, no matter who the person is, what happens is the person she's been interviewing leans in and says, "Was that okay?" Which to me is just so human and relatable, because that's ultimately like at the heart of this question is,
Yes.
so I think like no matter how successful, no matter how much influence or attention, we're all wondering like, man, am I good enough? Am I likable? Am I smart? And I just think there's something really healthy about, I've said healthy a lot, but there's something really good about acknowledging that.
Yeah, healthy. It's one of those words where, yeah, it's almost like you don't. I think we can say healthy when we're kind of acknowledging that it's
Mental health
it's
month.
subjective, and also it's not something that necessarily you need to be valuable, right? Like it is one of those weird words. But
Yeah.
that was a good answer, and I like that.
Thank you.
Oprah anecdote. Yeah.
Can we just be live all the time, and then you could encourage me if I say something smart throughout the day? You could say that was good.
If this is what you need, Jamie, sure. Every just like, great comment. Seriously, good job. You're doing well. I love it. Thank you, Liz. Yeah. I know Liz. I know that she. I hope you don't doubt yourself, Liz. You're great.
She's in your journaling workshop.
My journaling workshop. There was another question. Oh, I wanted to make sure we got to this question from Emma, and this might be a little repetitive to what we've talked about, but I think it's probably worth repeating just to address Emma's question. With being so isolated, mental health can deteriorate without being able to see any friends, and then just tips for specifically the isolation aspect of COVID.
Yeah. You want me to?
Yeah, go
okay.
for it.
Emma, thank you. We did touch on this a little bit earlier. So I think what's felt important to share is we want to acknowledge that, as you said, so many things have been canceled. In so many ways, we are limited. We do feel isolated. We do feel physically disconnected. Maybe there's someone you used to see consistently, or sometimes a friend, a family member, your parents, and you haven't been able to give them a hug in weeks, and that's hard. I think it's important to acknowledge all of that. And then I think with that, it feels important to just encourage people to take advantage of FaceTime, phone calls, Zoom. I don't know if anyone does Google Hangouts anymore, but just the ways that we can use technology to connect and to have conversations. It could literally just be an old-fashioned phone call, but I think leaning into the ways that we can reach out and connect. And I feel like I've been pleasantly surprised, and I've seen other people talk about this. I don't know. I feel like I've talked to some people who I haven't talked to in years. And maybe that's sort of because I had some time on my hands and I was thinking about them and just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna call. I'm just gonna reach out. And so I think it also applies to professional help. So if you need more support or help than a loved one can provide, to know that you can, there are mental health professionals who are working in this time. It probably won't look like you sitting on a couch in their office, but whether it's through the phone or through your computer, we can still get help in this time. So I think I love in 2020 to point to the technology that not everyone, but a lot of us have access to, and just to think about how can we use it to remain connected and ultimately to remain in relationships.
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, it's funny. That's all true. I've also found it very validating to see pieces about how Zoom fatigue is real. Because I think as an introvert, I've been kind of having to balance that too, right? Like, how do I not isolate myself? But then also, how do I also, still take care of myself and not
Yeah.
be Zooming and calling all the time.
You know, this is my privileged answer, but I don't have a lot of Zoom calls. And so I feel like I have Zoom excitement. Like when you don't have a lot of them, it's like, oh, I got one of those today. I wonder who this person's going to be. Like, I don't even remember that. It's like the scene in Elf. I forget the scene, but where he's just so excited. Like,
I feel like that's every scene in Elf where he's really excited.
But yeah, I feel like if you can keep your Zooms to a minimal amount, then you can really lean into them.
I love it. There's maybe one more question. I feel bad. There's so many great comments.
Someone said they've been seeing clients and it's working really well. I assume that
that's great.
Relates to the technology.
Yeah. Oh my God. The therapists who've had to very quickly adjust are definitely heroes.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not easy learning something new. I did see someone ask about KTV talked about living in a place where people aren't really abiding by social distancing and kind of balancing, being frustrated, being mad, also taking care of your own mental health. Advice about kind of dealing with not everyone in the world not taking it as seriously as they should be. Because I think for a lot of people, that's a very valid reason to feel angry and frustrated.
Oh, man. Yeah, I relate to that. I mean, I've been in Tennessee and Florida, so I definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty careful, but I feel like when I'm picking up food or out like once or twice a day, a lot of times I'm the only one with a mask on, and I totally relate to the frustration. I feel like we keep doing this, but I've seen some articles, not that I've read them all, but I know other people are thinking and talking and writing about this. I feel like the balance is, obviously we have to choose our battles. So ultimately you want to stay safe. Like first and foremost, you want to be safe. You want to keep certainly anyone you live with, you want to keep your people safe. And then with that, I think it's just figuring out how to manage those negative emotions or feelings and just, I think, how to navigate. We can't control other people, so we get to pick and choose when we speak up or where we go. I mean, I think for me, it's like I'm trying to either have food delivered or pick something up at a window because it feels safer than going inside. And if I go inside, I'll be frustrated. I'll look around and people don't have masks on. So I think it's that mix of like, how can I first, like right now I'm staying with my parents. So more than anything, I just want to keep my parents safe. But I think also just acknowledging the frustration of how people do approach this and behave so differently. And it feels like for a lot of people, it's like, oh, they just decided it was over, like,
yes,
they're done with coronavirus. So coronavirus must be done.
It's not how it works. I'm so sorry.
But I think maybe like any negative feeling or anything that's really disappointing or scary, I think it just becomes like, what do I do with this? How do I respond? And maybe being able to read about it is good, but also having people you can talk to about it.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of having people you can talk to about it, right? And kind of making sure that you and your circle are taking care of yourself, making sure that I know I've had friends talk about like parents not taking it seriously. And so they're, instead of kind of like angry posting on the internet, which is also super valid, or like, kind of getting angry, just kind of thinking about, okay, like, what can I control? I'm going to try my best to kind of keep my parents safe and to keep people who I love safe and keep myself safe. And it's tough.
I got this is today I got invited to speak at an old friend's memorial. There was a guy younger than me who died. We're from the same hometown. He's in the surf community, died of an overdose. And I got asked to speak this weekend, which led to a really interesting, hard conversation about essentially a little bit of what we're talking about. Like, how do I show up for my community? How do I show up for his friends and family? And yet, how do I do that in a way, or is it possible to do that in a way that's also safe?
Oh, it's so tough.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't have all that figured out, but I guess that's currently a really fascinating thing that I'm wrestling with.
Yeah, no, that's it's really, those are hard things to balance. And I think that that just speaks to, again, this idea of like the fact that it's so sad that you even have to kind of think about that and make that choice. And we've had really great stories of this one woman give an example of I think it was her mom had passed away during the pandemic, not related to COVID-19, but kind of having to accept the fact that she wasn't going to get a proper funeral, and kind of going through that grieving process of like, okay, I know why we're not having the funeral, but it's just like, and I understand that like we can still honor her life without a traditional funeral, but people are missing on things like that. And and I think I don't blame the instinct of people to want to still do something special after a loved one dies. And it's just like, yeah, it's really hard to balance those things.
I don't know how much time we have left, but I'm going to ask my mom to bring my dog in.
We always have time for dogs. I think everyone would agree.
She was just scratching at the door.
We always have time for dog. Oh my goodness, is this true? Gabe Howard, a good friend of mine, says you're going to be on Psych Central tomorrow.
I saw that as well. And I was, at first I was like, oh, I guess I have to do an interview, but then I saw we have already done the interview.
Oh, I see. So it's going to come out tomorrow.
Yeah,
you can get the dog if you want to get the dog.
Okay, I texted my mom.
Joelle, who's another friend of mine, said dog, yes, dog. We all want to see the
mom?
dog.
Mom. Yeah,
you're seeing it now, folks. Jamie is calling his mom to bring the dog.
They're not acknowledging. Hang on, I'm going to call my mom from the next room.
No, this is urgent. We promised people a dog. We can't not deliver now.
You can still keep. Now she is not answering. Oh, sorry.
No.
Can you bring Gracie in?
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
We're back.
We're back. We were talking about Psych Central. Gabe Howard's a friend of the Mighty and myself.
Cool.
That's exciting. You got to talk to him. Emma asked a question that we can kind of chat about while we're waiting for the dog, unless it's happening.
Oh yeah, go for it.
And she's here.
She's coming in.
Emma asked what techniques work both for you for coping with anxiety. It's just talking about just general anxiety techniques.
This is my best one right here.
And I feel like, hi, Jamie's mom.
She said hi. Hey. Oh, this is my best answer. Everyone should get a dog or an animal of your choice. Hey, who's that?
Oh my God, she's so sweet.
Wait, if I take this out, she might hear you better, or at all. Hey, look, who's that?
Hi.
Look.
What's her name again?
Her name's Gracie.
Gracie.
Wait, if you make cute noises, she'll.
Hi, Gracie. 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 Hi. Hi. She's like, who is calling my name? Gracie.
Who's that?
Hi.
Who is that?
We're trying. Just give me to talk to the dog. Hi, Gracie. Oh my God, she's so sweet. She's so tiny. Is she young? Is she a pups? Is she?
She's like 8 pounds. She's about a year, or she's a little over a year.
Okay. Oh, look at her. She's the head right there.
This is my best coping answer.
I guess that's the answer. Now I forget. To Emma's question. Emma said dogs make the world go round.
Oh, totally.
Oh my goodness. I love it. Oh, that was so exciting. Thank you. That was worth it.
I will say that's been, I mean, it's almost like, cliche because we know everyone loves their dogs, but it's been such a healthy, I said it again, but it truly has been such a good thing for me. Like on so many levels, just having her in my life, just comfort, companionship, just responsibility. It's so great, like having this little buddy just to like hang with all day. And even a lot of times getting to travel with back when travel was a thing, but
Right.
I'm super grateful. And I think obviously there's a lot of stories of how much an animal can help.
I mean, yeah, I don't have a dog, but at the Mighty office,
Yeah.
which I haven't been to in months now, we had dogs, and I'm like going through withdrawals. Like I'm realizing how much I appreciated seeing them every day. Emma said perfect answer. Like she's so satisfied by that. Like, she doesn't even need you to give another coping strategy.
Yeah.
that was it. Which is okay. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Oh, we're just coping in general.
She was asking about anxiety.
I mean, for me, I think my list is I take medication. I've been on an antidepressant for years. I usually refer to them as seasons, but I've had a few different seasons of counseling. I've been away from it for a couple months now because I feel like I've been in a pretty good place. And then I think that elusive self-care list, I think so, but it's felt important I think for years I just would say, oh, medicine and counseling, sort of like the professional answers, which are super important, but it's been cool to add other things over time, whether that's like rest or hobbies or relationships or, all the things we touched on earlier, books and shows, even like even surfing as an example, like reconnecting with something I've loved my whole life has been really good. Being more intentional about prioritizing relationships, whether it's with my nephews or my best friends. So again, I think it can be a long list and our lists can look different. And I'm sorry, she may have wanted like a more specific, like a breathing answer, but
no, but I think it's important when you're like talking about this. Like I think what's very clear is that like it depends, and I actually think that like you always have to be aware about articles. I think you both consume a lot of internet content. It's always good to be wary of like the 5 tips to cure your anxiety. And I think it's always good to find inspiration from other people, and it's always good. It's almost like sharing the knowledge, right? Like anxious people should talk to each other and like talk about what works. But at the end of the day, it's hard for you to say because you can never say, here's Jamie's perfect list for not having anxiety.
She just commented, wondering what works personally for you too.
Okay. Cool.
Sarah, did you get to share some?
I did it. Okay, I'll bite Emma. Thank you for including me.
I drink so much water during these. Are you hydrated enough?
So to be honest, I have an empty glass of water, and I think if it had more in it, I would be
we
drinking.
could do like a virtual. I could pour mine into your glass. I don't think it would go well in real life. It would be really cool though.
Do you say it was wine? Is that what you said? No,
wait, look, it almost works.
Ready? Hold on. I'll do it this way.
But it'll pour onto the floor. But just pretend.
Okay. Thank you. As I navigate this question,
No, you're drinking water.
No, you're fine. For me, and again, like also, I think it's a continual work in progress. Learning how to rest has helped me. Learning how to kind of accept that I get very. It's a total ironic because I work on a laptop and I use social media a lot, but I get very overstimulated very easily. Like any kind of like every text message I get, every email I get, it's like a little ping and that kind of like hurts me a little bit. And so I'm definitely the type of person where it's like, okay, like some nights at like 9 p.m., my phone is on airplane mode. And I'm like, see ya. And I like try to like look around me and like use things in my environment. So for me personally, because I get overstimulated very easily, and I feel like we're living today in a world where there's like too many ways for people to contact you. I like tend to like need to take times to like get away from that. I'm also big, and I also say this, very personally, I have so much, my anxiety lives with me so physically that yoga and then embarrassingly enough dancing are two things that, thank you for saying it's so embarrassing. I'm a little embarrassed because I've been doing a lot of dancing by myself because I don't get to go to my dance classes. And so it's been a lot of just like weirdo stuff happening because I don't have, no one to whatever. So for me, any kind of movement is really important for me because again, like it lives in me, and yoga, stretching, dancing, moving, which is something that I definitely didn't do enough for myself. Beginning of having to work from home, I'm trying to figure out how to like create slightly a routine of like a stretch break, a movement break. Those two things help me. Breaks, moving. I'm also on anxiety medication. Helps a lot with racing thoughts. I've found that what I'm on. Yeah, that's me. That's what I guess I'll end it there. I feel like
that's really good.
So it's always trial and error, though, right? It's always trial and error. And I think the expectation also, and this is what I always would remind people, like I'm trying to accept that like anxiety kind of fuels me a little bit. So I'm never seeking a world where I'm like anxiety free, right? We're really just seeking a world where I feel like I'm not too anxious to do the things I care about. I'm not too anxious to do things that make me happy, and I'm not too anxious that I physically feel like awful all the time, you know? So for me, managing those things I think is more important than getting rid of it entirely.
Somebody else started dancing.
Yes, Larissa. I love that. Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I know I'm not the only one dancing in their apartment alone. Like there's many of us. That would be exist.
And there's like Zoom classes.
Oh yeah, there's a Zoom classes, which I should take advantage of. But yeah, I've been inching into it with an occasional alone dance party.
I like it.
Yes, Larissa. Dance alone in your apartment. Best cure for anxiety. Okay, Jamie. I mean, it's been so much fun talking to you. I've been following your work for a while, even though this is our first time.
Oh, my sister just commented that she's taking Zoom dance classes.
Yes. Okay, Jessica. Maybe I'll hit you up in the comments so you can let me know where you're doing that.
I talked about her. She's the one who's busy with a full-time job and 2 boys who she's become their teacher. They just finished. So she's making time for Zoom dance in the midst of it all.
Any parent out there is a hero. Like I can't even say that enough. I've reflected many times how much different the situation would be if I had a kid somewhere. Like I just God bless you all, seriously. Oh my God, Larissa said if the neighbors looked inside, they would probably call an ambulance. That's such a great comment.
It is.
Katie said that she likes cooking. That's great.
Yeah, see, this is that example where like we can have different things on our list, but we can cheer each other on.
Yes, I love that idea.
Like I don't want to cook, but I'm glad that she cooks.
I've been cooking a little more, I will say. It's been fun to like make meals for myself. Has been like nothing advanced. But I love that.
I'm gonna follow you on Twitter.
Oh yeah, I realized I have my Twitter handle.
I like that.
That was up automatically.
That's a little promo, a little
I promise
marketing.
I'm not trying to promote.
You're trying to get some followers.
I promise I'm not.
Yeah, I see it. You have a blue check mark.
You have a blue check mark.
There was a little girl. The dogs are barking. There was a little girl, my friend's daughter, that I was surfing with him and his kids yesterday. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry.
I know the dogs.
I think they're probably like, I don't know, 11 or 12. She was so intrigued by the blue check mark. She's like,
so sweet.
How did you get that? And I was like, I started a charity. And she's like, what's that? I was like,
how did you get that?
And then she was funny. She goes, well, give me a shout out.
I love it. The ultimate influencer. Yeah. She's learning early.
It's also funny because her dad runs her account or like manages it, you know. But yeah,
it's so sweet. I love it. Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. Liz, thank you for the plug. Debbie said, and this is a good one, I think, to answer. I just got diagnosed, not sure with what, but she said she just knew with all of this, and she also lives with Parkinson's. Suggestions? I mean, I guess any any words for someone who's dealing with maybe something new, right? Maybe something newer.
Man, just got diagnosed. I'm new to all this. I also have, Debbie, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm just sorry. I don't know a lot about Parkinson's. I don't pretend to know the ins and outs. I think she mentioned, I see her other comment, so I think she's saying I just got diagnosed with anxiety and you have Parkinson's. First off, thank you for sharing that. I think we want to acknowledge the weight, and yeah, just I think that's why it feels important in this season to acknowledge people like Debbie, where it's not like life's easy and we just happen to be dealing with a pandemic, right? It's like so many things hit at the same time. So many people are juggling and navigating multiple things that are really hard, many of which may have nothing to do with this pandemic, but are likely made harder because of the pandemic. So I think our advice would be to keep sharing, keep being honest. I think for both communities that maybe you now represent or have access to, thankfully there are so many people who can relate to the struggles that you are experiencing and what you're navigating with physical health and mental health. And I think just to know that your life has value, that you're still here, you're still with us, you're breathing, and we're glad, and that it's okay to acknowledge the hard stuff. And my hope would be that in the midst of that, there can still be really good stuff. And again, I don't pretend to know exactly who's in your life and what it all looks like, but just to know that you still deserve love, you still deserve relationships, you still deserve to be known, you deserve a support system. So hopefully some of that is encouraging, but thank you for being here and thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And I think, just taking care of yourself. I think you said it. It's important to remember that people have been managing health conditions and worried about their health every single day long before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So just kind of, giving those people an extra shout out that for some people, it's not like, I think for most people, but for specific people in the chronic illness community, it's not like they never had to worry about their health before and now they're worrying about it. For some people, it's, it's been a reality all along. So we're rooting for you, Debbie.
I do think I touched on community and then I see another comment, but I think being able to connect with other people where you can relate and they can relate, I think is a really powerful thing, because I can imagine it feels really lonely at times and foreign and new and isolating. And so I think to know that other people, even if their circumstances don't match yours identically, just to find people that you can share with and relate with and feel understood by, I think there's a lot of value in that.
Thank you, everyone. For everyone who's commented, everyone who's watching. Amazing. I don't know if you see this, Jamie. Debbie said, thank you. That helps big time. I have an appointment with a Parkinson's movement specialist.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you again for being here with us, Debbie. And we'll be rooting for your appointment, hoping it goes really well.
Amazing. Well, is there anything else you wanna tell these folks?
This was great. I like that you go long, because I go long. I feel like it's interesting, because there's sort of this narrative that like things have to be short these days, and so I like that we just like went for it. We had a long talk.
Me too. We got to cover a lot, and also there's no rush, right?
Yeah, and people hung out with us, which is awesome.
I love it.
I followed you on the Twitter now, so I've
okay, mission accomplished then for the real purpose of this live.
I can't wait to tell my friend's daughter that I found another blue check mark person. So
that's too much. That's too much. Oh my God. Emma said, I can ask you 2 questions forever. Well, hopefully we'll get to do this again. Maybe we'll have another check-in. We can see how everyone's doing. I'm curious to know how things evolve for you. And also ending things is hard, right? But I guess thanks for the therapeutic time. I love that. I love how how Laura phrased that. Is there any kind of last words you want to say? I know it's kind of a lot of pressure, but
honestly, I feel like I think what I got to share with Debbie, I feel like that felt, pretty. I don't know. If Debbie's okay with it, hopefully we can all borrow from some of that, because I think no matter what life looks like, it's good to come back to some of those basics that we need other people, right? I think that's the shirt you said.
Yes, people need people.
Yeah, just kind of some of those simple truths that in this time where we feel isolated and disconnected and we feel the distance, like just to remember that we're still made for conversations and friendships and relationships. We can use technology. We can use technology if we're really struggling. I love to point to crisis text line as a great example. If it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m, just to know that whether it's people you know or people you don't, there are folks who are available and folks who want to walk through this time with you. They want to walk through the anxiety and the uncertainty, and also just be encouraged that other people probably feel some of what you feel. And so don't be afraid to say it out loud, or don't be afraid to put it in a text, or don't be afraid to express it. And I think it also even applies to some of the hard stuff that we touched on earlier in terms of the headlines. Something that really resonated with me was a friend that kind of just said, hey, let's stop being so careful. And I think all of it makes a case for being honest and not being so curated and polished. So I think whether you're frustrated with the pandemic or your mental health or stigma or racism or whatever it may be, there's room and there's a need for your voice and your honesty and ultimately your life in the midst of this season.
Yeah, such a beautiful message to end on, because again, like you said, it's evergreen. This is what we're all going through right now, but a lot of this stuff, is something that they're lifelong journeys for all of us. And we're all gonna figure it out, guys. Or we're all gonna be okay at least. We might not figure it out entirely.
The Mighty posted the crisis text line phone number, which is awesome. So anyone in the U.S. can text 741-741 at any time. And they are also active in Canada, Ireland, and the UK, which is wonderful. They are growing and expanding.
Yeah, they're such a good resource.
Sarah, you were a wonderful host.
Thank you, Jamie. You're a wonderful guest. It was great to have you.
I had no clue. I did not read the Google Doc. I had no questions. I didn't even know if I had answers.
Listen, you managed it. I told Jamie at the beginning this was going to be hard hitting.
Yeah.
And I think I made him sweat a little bit with that self-care question, I think.
You made it easy. Oh, yeah. I'm going to research how many words it is.
Okay, Jamie, thank you so much.
Oh,
thank you, everyone who joined us. Genuinely happy last week of Mental Health Month, but we're going to continue talking about this kind of stuff months and months as long as we need to. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye, guys.